August 10th, 1944, the outskirts of Avranches, Normandy. General Hans Freiherr von Funck, commander of XLVII Panzerkorps, stood beside a burned-out Panther tank, its turret blown completely off and lying upside down in a ditch 15 meters away. The tank had been hit by something he couldn't identify, something none of his gunners believed possible. The Panther had been facing west. The hit had come from the east. That alone unsettled him. It meant the gun that fired the shot had passed clean through the tank before the crew even saw it. A German recovery officer approached Funck and handed him a jagged metal fragment. "Not British, not Soviet," he said. "From an American shell, but the caliber seems—" He hesitated, eyeing the cratered Panther hull. "Impossible." Funck turned the fragment in his hand. It was thick, heavy, cleanly machined, not from a 75mm, not from an Ordnance QF 17-pounder, and certainly not from the weak American 57mm guns that German intelligence had assured him were standard on US tanks. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "This was a single shot?" Funck asked. "Yes, Herr General, one shot, at approximately 1,500 meters. Funck looked again at the Panther. 1,500 meters. Nothing in American service, nothing the German army believed the Americans possessed, could kill a Panther frontally at that distance. Nothing. Yet, the charred bodies still inside the hull told another story. Funck suddenly understood why the operations reports from the previous night included several references to mysterious long-range penetrations and unknown heavy-caliber weapons. For weeks, German command had assumed these were British 17-pounder Fireflies operating in American sectors. That explanation no longer seemed credible. He lowered his voice, speaking mostly to himself. "They have a new gun." 2 weeks earlier, July 28, 1944, German signals intelligence at La Roche-Guyon intercepted an unusual American radio transmission from the 3rd Armored Division. Encrypted portions referenced 90mm readiness, AA assets retasked, and tank destroyer integration incomplete. Oberstleutnant Rudolf Albrecht at Army Group B's intelligence desk wrote a brief note. Unclear reference to American 90mm gun. Possibly anti-aircraft only. No known ground weapon of this caliber currently deployed. SIGINT. Report 72844. He marked it low priority. The Americans used the 90mm as an anti-aircraft weapon. Yes, everyone knew that. And it was a good one. Powerful, fast-firing, effective against high-altitude bombers. But the idea that the Americans would mount such a weapon on a ground vehicle, or worse, on a tank, struck German analysts as absurd. The 90mm gun was heavy. Recoil was massive. Ammunition bulky. The Americans did not build tanks with that kind of firepower. German intelligence repeated this almost as mantra. American tanks are undergunned, lightly armored, and tactically naive. That was the belief inside German headquarters. That was the doctrine. That was the comfort. And in late July 1944, when the Wehrmacht was still trying to choke off the American breakout at Saint-Lô, it was a comfort they desperately needed. No one had yet seen an M36 Jackson in combat. No one had yet seen the prototype T-26 heavy tanks creeping ashore, and no one knew that the Americans had quietly modified dozens of M10s and self-propelled mounts to carry 90mm AA guns as an emergency countermeasure against German armor. But German troops at the front had seen something, and they were terrified. On August 2nd, 1944, a Panther platoon from Panzer Lehr Division engaged American armor near Roncy. The commanding officer, Oberleutnant Walter Kuhlmann, submitted a shaken after-action report. Distance, approximately 1,400 meters. Enemy gun, unknown. Our lead Panther, turret number 223, destroyed by a single hit through the glasses, shot passed through front armor, inner transmission housing, and exited rear plate. Crew killed instantly. No flame observed, just destroyed. Kuhlmann added a final note that unsettled even the seasoned staff at Panzer. The enemy vehicle was not identified. It fired, reversed into defilade, and we never saw it again. This gun is unlike anything the Americans have fielded before. The report was forwarded to the German Army High Command in Berlin. It was read, it was initialed, and it was ignored. The Americans were incapable of producing such a weapon, analysts insisted. Only the British had anything close, and even the 17-pounder needed special APDS rounds to defeat a Panther frontally at long range. Kuhlmann misjudged the range, they told themselves. Perhaps he was flanked. Perhaps the round hit a weak spot. Perhaps the crew panicked. Anything was more believable than the alternative. That the Americans had suddenly introduced a gun capable of killing Germany's best tank from a mile away. August 6, 1944. The Falaise Argentan Gap. Oberst Franz Bake, commanding Kampfgruppe Bake, received a classified message, stamped urgent, from the 9th Panzer Division intelligence section. The message contained a single photograph. Bake studied it for nearly a minute without speaking. It showed an American M10 tank destroyer mounting a barrel significantly thicker and longer than the standard 3-inch gun. The muzzle brake was unmistakably one of an anti-aircraft weapon. German analysts had drawn a red circle around the breach area. Underneath, someone had scribbled, "Is this the 90mm AA gun? If so, penetration estimates must be revised immediately." 9th Panzer, Forward Recon 8644. Bake stiffened. He knew what the 90mm anti-aircraft gun could do. He had seen its sister weapon, the German 88mm, tear apart Allied armor at extreme distances. If the Americans had a similar weapon on a mobile platform, German armor doctrine would need to be rewritten overnight. He ordered the photo sent to General Eberbach at Panzergruppe West. He never got a response. By the time the message reached higher headquarters, communications were collapsing under relentless Allied air attacks. Roads were clogged, units encircled. Panzergruppe West was ceasing to function as a cohesive command structure. The warning was effectively lost, and the Americans kept advancing. August 12, 1944, near Mortain. The sun was just rising when Panzer IVs from 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, attempted to push toward Hill 317, a vital high ground position held by the US 30th Infantry Division. They expected Shermans, they expected bazookas, they expected artillery. What they got was something else entirely. At 6:18, a German tank commander radioed in the first report, Panzerführer 5, taking fire from extreme range, caliber unknown, impact velocity unusually high, 2 Panzer IVs destroyed with single shots. At 06:26, another transmission. We cannot locate the gun. Hits arriving from over the ridgeline. Request smoke. Request immediate smoke. At 06:31, his final transmission. This is not a British gun. Repeat, this is not a British gun. They have something else. Something. Transmission cuts. When SS Grenadiers later examined the wrecks, they found penetration holes so clean and narrow, they looked almost surgical. The 90mm M3 had spoken. German doctrine up to mid-1944 was built around one core assumption. American armor was inferior. German officers repeated it. German training manuals stated it. Hitler himself believed it so deeply that he refused to authorize larger-scale production of the Tiger II, claiming the Americans were years behind in heavy armor development. The idea that the Americans suddenly fielded a gun powerful enough to threaten the Panther or even the Tiger I at long range was considered unthinkable. Which is why the first official assessment to acknowledge the threat reads almost like a confession. Dated August 14, 1944, written by Generalleutnant Heinrich von Luttwitz of the 2nd Panzer Division. We are encountering a new American weapon, likely the 90mm PDA gun, mounted on self-propelled vehicles, penetration at 1,500 meters, confirmed. This changes the tactical situation significantly. Von Luttwitz underlined the last sentence twice. He then sent a follow-up message. The Americans were not supposed to have this capability. Request clarification from Heereswaffenamt intelligence. Have they developed a new tank, or is this an adaptation of existing assets? The response came 4 days later, and it was useless. Berlin did not know. Berlin had no data. Berlin still believed the Americans relied on 75mm and 76mm guns. The truth had not reached them. The front knew. The tank commanders knew. The men dying inside Panthers and Panzer IVs knew, but Berlin did not. On August the 15th, near Le Bourg Saint-Léonard, elements of the 116th Panzer Division, Windhund, overran a temporary U.S. command post that had been hastily abandoned during a nighttime withdrawal. Among the notebooks, maps, and personal effects were 3 stapled sheets that became some of the most important intelligence documents German armor analysts ever recovered. Stenciled at the top, Ordnance Department, 90mm gun, field performance notes. Below were typed ballistic tables, firing tests, and range calculations. One line, circled by the American officer who had previously carried the packet, read, APCBC penetration at 1,500 yards, 138 meters, degrees. Sufficient to defeat Panther glacis at favorable impact angles. General Gerhard Engel wrote 2 words in the margin of the copy forwarded to him. Catastrophic implications. The cheap American typewriter ink terrified him more than the Allied bombs falling daily on German positions. By late August 1944, the 90mm gun had earned a nickname among German crews, Der Geisterschuss, the ghost shot. Panther crews described being hit without ever seeing muzzle flash or smoke. The 90mm gun's longer range, higher velocity, and American use of hull-down defensive positions meant many engagements ended before German tanks could even return fire. Tank commanders started reporting psychological effects, reluctance to expose their glacis, refusal to crest hills, panic at long-range impacts, overestimation of American firepower, rapid withdrawal when hit from beyond 1,200 meters. One Panther commander expressed it plainly in a letter later intercepted by Allied censors. We are being killed from distances at which our own guns have no effect. Another, it is as if the Americans have turned our own 88 against us. Despite mounting evidence, German High Command still refused to fully acknowledge what frontline units were experiencing. On August 20th, Hitler held a briefing at the Wolf's Lair. His generals presented him with documented cases of Panthers being destroyed at extreme ranges. Hitler's response, impossible. The Americans lack the technical ability. General Guderian, red-faced with frustration, replied, Mein Führer, with respect, the wrecks are on the field. Our crews are dead. The Americans have this weapon. Hitler dismissed it as defeatism. The next day, Guderian privately remarked to an aide, We are not losing to American tanks, we are losing to American industry. August 23rd, 1944. Near Trun, 2 Tigers from Schwere Panzer Abteilung 503 engaged what they believed to be Shermans at long range. At 1,600 meters, a Tiger was struck on the turret side, penetrated, exploded. Seconds later, the second Tiger was hit through the lower glaciers. Its driver died. Instantly, its turret jammed. The crew bailed. The battalion commander ordered immediate reconnaissance. What they found stunned them. Hidden behind hedgerows, dug into a reverse slope firing position, were 2 American M36 Jacksons, each mounting the 90mm gun. This was the first time German troops physically captured one intact. The vehicle was immediately inspected by German engineers. The assessment, written by Oberst Heinrich Bock, this is a direct answer to the Panther, gun equal to our 88mm, accurate, stable, and deadly at long distance. He added, Had the Americans deployed this weapon in large numbers earlier, our armored formations in Normandy would have been annihilated. By the end of August 1944, one thing had become clear to nearly every German commander in France. The Americans were not the naive, underarmed, inexperienced force German intelligence had predicted. They were adapting, innovating, improving, and doing so faster than the Wehrmacht could respond. In private, General Eberbach voiced the fear his staff would not put into reports. If they mass-produce this gun, our armor is finished. He was right. Within months, hundreds of M36s would sweep across Western Europe. Within a year, the T-26E3, later named the M26 Pershing, would be rolling through Germany itself. But on that August morning in Normandy, as General von Funck looked at the Panther torn open by a weapon Berlin insisted did not exist, he understood something before many of his colleagues did. The Americans were no longer playing catch-up. They had caught up and surpassed them. August 30th, 1944. East of the Seine River, General Heinrich Eberbach, commander of Panzergruppe West, stood at a folding field table, staring at three things he wished he had never seen: a captured American 90mm armor-piercing shell, a report from the 2nd SS Panzer Division, a Panther glacis plate with a hole the size of a coffee cup punched clean through it. All three told the same story. The Americans had a weapon capable of killing Panthers and Tigers at distances Germany had once believed only the vaunted 88mm could command. Eberbach tried to maintain composure, but his staff watched on something rare in a German panzer general. Uncertainty. Real uncertainty. Behind him, the muffled rumble of artillery grew louder. German forces were in full retreat across France. What remained of Panzergruppe West was now scattered, exhausted and bleeding fuel, faster than Berlin could order it to conserve. He looked again at the hole through the glacis plate. It was perfectly circular. No chipping, no cracking, no spalling. A high-velocity penetration, clean, precise, beautiful in a way that made him sick. His intelligence chief, Oberst Hans Mertens, approached with the latest frontline dispatches. "Herr General," Mertens said quietly, "we have more reports. Panthers lost near Elbeuf at ranges exceeding 200 meters. Several crews state they were killed before they could even see the enemy gunners." Eberbach didn't respond. Mertens tried again. "We believe this is the American 90mm gun, likely mounted on their self-propelled tank destroyers, perhaps also on a new heavy tank." Eberbach turned sharply at that. "A new heavy tank? From the Americans?" He almost spat the words. "Ridiculous. They do not build heavy armor." Mertens swallowed. "Not until now." There was silence. A long, heavy silence that none of the staff dared break. Then Eberbach asked the question hanging over all of them. "How many of these guns do they have?" Mertens exhaled. "We don't know, but the number is increasing rapidly." While generals debated calibers and penetration tables, German tank crews had no such luxury. They were meeting the 90mm gun face to face, at long distances, under fire, and it was killing them. September 2nd, 1944. Near Cambrai, Unteroffizier Lucas Weber, commanding a Panther from 9th Panzer Division, wrote a letter home that was later recovered from his effects. "Something new is hunting us. It fires from beyond where we can see. The round comes like lightning. The first hit destroys the tank. There is no second." His letter never reached Germany. Weber died 2 days later. His Panther knocked out by an M36 Jackson, dug in behind a stone wall 300 meters away. His driver never even saw the muzzle flash. On September the 5th, a crippled American M36 was captured intact near Mons after its crew abandoned it due to engine failure. The vehicle was dragged back behind German lines and examined by weapons engineers. The lead engineer, Dr. Ernst Heidkamp, formerly of Rheinmetall Borsig, took one look at the breech block and felt his stomach sink. He whispered, "Gott im Himmel, they've put it on a gun carriage." His assistant frowned. "We've always said they couldn't." Heidkamp pressed his palm against the heavy breech. "They can, and they have." He began taking measurements, muttering to himself like a professor faced with proof his entire theory of physics was wrong. "The recoil system is simplified. Americans prefer reliability over elegance. Smart, very smart. Ammunition storage, accessible. Shielding, minimal but effective. Traverse, adequate. Depression and elevation, excellent. My God, the breech is sturdier than the 8.8 cm Flak 36. Another engineer interrupted. "Look at this. He held up a spent shell casing found in the fighting compartment. Stenciled markings read 90 mm, M82 BC. Inside the base of the casing, a faint engraving, Ordnance. Not for AA use. Heidkamp understood immediately. This version is meant for killing tanks, not aircraft. He stepped back and nodded grimly. This gun is the American response to the Panther. A junior engineer, pale and sweating, asked the question no one wanted to voice. Can it penetrate a Tiger at 1,500 meters? Heidkamp nodded once. Frontally? No. But the turret, the lower plate, the mantlet edges, yes, easily. Then he added, even more quietly, and at 800 meters, it will kill a Tiger from almost any angle. No one spoke for nearly a minute. When they did, it was the youngest present, barely 22, who said what the senior officers would not. If they have many of these, the war is over. The report reached Berlin on September the 9th, and it was immediately squashed. The very idea that the Americans, a nation German propaganda consistently labeled mechanically clumsy, racially inferior, and militarily naive, could produce a weapon equal or superior to the German 88 mm was politically unacceptable. General Alfred Jodl wrote in the margin, exaggerated, no such weapon exists in meaningful numbers. General Bergdorf added, Panther is superior at all normal combat distances. This must be defeatist propaganda. Hitler himself, upon hearing the first mention of a 90 mm American gun, exploded. Lies! The Americans build tractors, refrigerators, and cheap automobiles. They cannot build heavy guns. Guderian, trying and failing to maintain calm, replied, Mein Führer, the Americans build everything, and they build it fast. Hitler waved him off. The American is a cowardly creature. He will not fight us in close combat. These long-distance stories are nothing but excuses from incompetent commanders. The conversation ended there. The consequences would take months to unfold. German tank crews did not care what Berlin said. They lived or died by what they saw. And what they saw was a nightmare. September 12th, 1944. Near Aachen. An engagement between a German Kampfgruppe and the US 3rd Armored Division began at dawn. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A Panther named Seele advanced cautiously along a ridge, led tank of its platoon. Its commander, Feldwebel Rüdiger Hoffmann, scanned the horizon through binoculars. He spotted movement, shadow, maybe a Sherman, range 1,800 meters. He prepared to fire. Then, a flash, just one. A second later, Seele disintegrated. The round punched through the turret front, detonated the ammunition, and blew the cupola skyward. The Panther burned for 2 hours. When the surviving crew from the rest of the platoon finally reached the wreck, all they found of Hoffmann's crew were charred bones and twisted steel. One of the German survivors whispered, "That was no 76 mm. The Americans moved away unseen. By late September, German units across the Western Front began recording similar encounters. Panthers penetrated frontally at 1,500 meters. Panzer IVs destroyed before they could even fire. Tigers damaged at distances previously considered safe. Long-range ambushes that felt eerily similar to engagements against Soviet 85mm guns. Reports repeatedly referenced the same thing. A heavy-caliber American gun firing from concealed positions, but the key words that appeared again and again were very high velocity, unexpected range, unseen attacker. The 90mm gun was not just powerful, it was tactical. It gave the Americans something German armor was built around, long-range, first-shot lethality. For years, the Panther and Tiger had owned that domain. Now, suddenly, they did not. September 15th, 1944. Spa, Belgium. A high-level conference, assembled by Field Marshal Walter Model, brought together tank commanders from several shattered panzer divisions. The topic, Unidentified American weapon with long-range armor-killing capability. Oberstleutnant Karl August Routh of the 2nd Panzer Division spoke first. He placed a stack of field reports on the table and tapped them. "This," he said, "is the American 90mm gun, and it is killing our Panthers and Tigers from ranges at which we cannot effectively respond." A colonel scoffed. "The Americans cannot even build a proper armored suspension. You expect us to believe they suddenly have an 88mm equivalent weapon?" Routh opened a folder. Inside, photographs of a destroyed Panther. The entry hole was dead center on the glacis. He slid the photo across the table. Range, 1,830 meters. Silence. He placed another photo. Panzer IV. Same weapon. Range 1,600 meters. Silence again. Then a third. A tiger eye, and penetrated just under the mantlet. It killed the gunner and wounded the commander. Range 1,200 meters. Field Marshal Model stared at the photographs for nearly a minute without speaking. Then he said something no German commander had dared say publicly. "We are facing an American gun equal to the 8.8, and they will produce it faster than we can destroy it." The room remained silent. Routh's next words were worse. "We estimate the Americans will field several hundred of these guns within 2 months, possibly more." Model turned away, hands clasped behind him, and whispered, "Then the armored war in the West is lost." On September 18th, the unthinkable happened. A Königstiger, Tiger II, from Schwere Panzer Abteilung 506 was struck at 1,400 meters by an American 90mm gun during a running battle near Stolberg. The shell hit the turret side, one of the thickest turret plates ever mounted on a tank, and penetrated. The Tiger II's turret crew died instantly. The driver and radio operator bailed out and survived. When interrogated by German intelligence, the driver insisted, "It was a heavy American gun. It fired from over a kilometer away. We had no chance to engage it." German engineers inspected the wreck and confirmed that the 90mm APC round had punched cleanly through the side armor. For the first time, the Tiger II, the most heavily armored tank Germany had ever built, had been killed at long range by American artillery. This incident was classified top secret. Hitler was never told. On September 21st, General Hasso von Manteuffel, one of Germany's most respected panzer leaders, wrote privately to Guderian, "The Americans have mastered long-range anti-tank gunnery. Our Panthers are increasingly outmatched at the ranges where we once dominated. If they field a heavy tank with this gun, it will change the balance of the war." 2 days later, the first T-26 E3 Pershings arrived in Antwerp. Manteuffel would see one of them in combat 5 months later in the streets of Cologne, where it would kill a Panther with a single shot. He was right. The balance had changed. By early October 1944, German armored doctrine in the West shifted for the first time since 1940. New orders went out. Avoid long-range duels with American forces. Engage only from flanking angles. Use smoke liberally. Avoid crests and exposed positions. Assume American tank destroyers can penetrate Panthers at 1,200, 1,500 meters. But the most telling directive came from Panzergruppe West headquarters. Do not assume superiority in long-range engagements. The Americans possess a weapon with capabilities comparable to German 88mm guns. It was the closest Berlin ever came to admitting the truth. The Americans, once mocked for their light, undergunned tanks, had done the impossible. They had wrested the long-range battlefield advantage away from the Wehrmacht. And the German High Command, slow to react, slower to adapt, and paralyzed by Hitler's denial, was only beginning to understand what that meant. For the first time since 1941, German tank commanders were afraid of American guns. The 90mm M3 had arrived, and it was just the beginning. October 9th, 1944, the Hürtgen Forest, a place so dark and tangled that even sunlight seemed unwilling to enter. Rain fell in slow, cold sheets, mud swallowed boots whole. Trees stood like jagged columns of a ruined cathedral, and somewhere beyond the thick curtain of pine, German armor was gathering. Rumor said tigers. Rumor said panthers. Rumor said the Germans were preparing a counterstroke to punch the Americans back into Belgium. Rumor had been wrong before, but on this day it was not. On the American side, a thin line of M36 Jacksons from the 703rd Tank Destroyer Battalion waited along a ridge overlooking a clearing barely 500 meters across. The crews were shivering, not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from the cold, the kind of cold that seeped into bones and lingered. Sergeant William Red Hutchins cleaned the lenses of his M71 binoculars for the 5th time that hour. He kept muttering the same phrase to himself, like a prayer: keep the barrel warm, keep the barrel dry, keep the barrel ready. His M36, nicknamed Bluebird, sat in a camouflage nest of logs and branches. Its 90mm gun depressed slightly, aimed at the only path wide enough for a heavy tank column. Corporal Danny Klein, Hutchins's gunner, had a hand resting lightly on the elevation handwheel. "You think they're coming, real tigers?" Klein asked. Hutchins nodded, eyes fixed on the tree line. "Reports say 2 platoons, maybe more." Klein snorted. "What kind of idiot drives heavy tanks into this forest?" "Desperate ones," Hutchins replied. The Americans were dug in, concealed, silent. They had one advantage: range. And in this forest, every meter mattered. On the other side of the clearing, Tiger Commander Lieutenant Otto Reitz wiped rain from his periscope lens and cursed under his breath. Impenetrable forest, mud, American artillery, and now they send tigers into it. He gripped his intercom throat mic. "Driver forward. Slow. Keep to the right side of the trail. Avoid deep mud." His Tiger Eye grumbled forward, its Maybach engine echoing through the trees like rolling thunder. Behind him came 4 more Tigers. Behind them, 6 Panthers. Behind them, infantry from the 275th Volksgrenadier Division trudged in miserable silence. The men were exhausted. Germany was exhausted. Reitz wasn't blind to reality. Half his tankers were replacements. Most had never seen a Sherman up close, let alone the new long-barreled variants. And none had ever heard of the American 90mm gun. Not officially, but the rumors were circulating. Reitz himself had dismissed them as frontline exaggeration, until he had seen a Panther gutted by a single shell at 300 meters. Now, he wasn't so sure. He keyed his mic again. "All tanks close up, expect contact. We are leaving the forest and entering open ground." The forest ended abruptly. Before them lay a clearing shaped like a shallow bowl. "Perfect killing field," his gunner murmured. Reitz didn't reply. He was thinking the same thing. Sergeant Hutchins spotted the first flicker of movement through the mist. A muzzle brake. Large, square-edged. He exhaled slowly. "Tiger," he whispered. Klein grinned nervously. "Time to test the new toy." Hutchins tapped his shoulder. "Target, fire when ready." Klein adjusted the sight. The Tiger was just over 700 meters away, close by their standards, but far for the Germans to spot a camouflaged Jackson. He whispered, "On the way." The 90mm barked. A deafening crack echoed through the clearing. Inside Lieutenant Reitz's Tiger, everything happened in an instant. A blinding flash, a sound like someone slamming a steel door with the force of God. The turret interior filled with sparks and smoke. The radio operator slumped sideways, blood spraying from a hole in his chest. Reitz shouted, "Hit! Turret front!" His gunner was alive, but stunned, ears ringing. The loader screamed that the breech was jammed. The shell had punched partially through the mantlet, sending a shockwave through the turret. Had it been a few centimeters lower, it would have gone straight through and killed them all. Reitz snapped the mic open. "All Tigers, contact front, unknown gun, heavy caliber." He scanned desperately but couldn't see the firing position. "Driver, reverse fast, back into the trees." But the Tiger was slow. Too slow. The second American shell hit 1.3 seconds later. This time it struck just under the right side of the mantlet. The Tiger's shot trap. The round ricocheted downward. straight into the thin roof of the driver's compartment. The Tiger exploded internally. Fire roared through the hull. The crew never had a chance. From the American ridge, Hutchins watched the Tiger blossom into flame and whispered, "One down." German radios erupted with confusion. "Tiger 2. Pull back. Watch the right. Unknown gun. Repeat, heavy gun, high velocity. Panthers, swing left flank. We cannot see them. Where are they firing from? Hit! Hit! I'm burning." A second Tiger, Tiger 213, pushed forward despite orders. Its commander was determined to spot the source of the fire. He saw nothing, only fog and forest. Then a round smashed through his turret ring. His Tiger ground to a halt, dead. The rest of the heavy tanks froze. No one wanted to be the next target. Germany, for the first time in the war, felt the helplessness the Soviets had felt in 1943 when Tigers first appeared, an invisible enemy killing you from beyond your effective range. "Keep firing," Hutchins ordered. "Aim for turret rings. Don't waste ammo." 3 more M36s opened up from new angles. The clearing echoed with cracks of the 90mm meat, each one followed by a distant metallic thung, or wham, as rounds found steel. A Panther on the German left flank took a hit at 900 meters. The round penetrated through the front plate, punched out the rear armor, and kept going. The tank's commander bailed out screaming, his uniform on fire. Another Panther, trying to turn broadside, got hit in the side. Its ammunition detonated in a column of flame that shot 20 meters into the sky. German infantry hit the dirt, stunned. One soldier yelled, "Where are they? Where is the enemy?" No one could answer. The Americans were ghosts. Further back, Oberst Karl Mertens, the same intelligence officer who had warned Panzergruppe West weeks earlier, watched the battle unfold through binoculars. His face went ashen. This was no 76mm Sherman gun. This wasn't even the British 17-pounder. This was something else, something worse. He wrote hurried notes. Impact signature consistent with 90mm APC, range 700-900 meters. Tigers cannot advance. Panthers burning, enemy unseen. Then he added, "Long-range American ambush tactics now fully developed. Suggest immediate withdrawal." But by then it was too late. The Germans weren't finished. Reitz's second-in-command, Feldwebel Jürgen Kruger, barked orders. "All tanks, smoke, artillery, fire on the ridge." German Nebelwerfer rockets shrieked overhead, followed by 105mm shells that churned the American ridge into explosions of mud and dirt. Hutchins ducked as a shell burst 20 meters to the right, showering his M36 with debris. "Don't let them pin us," he shouted. Klein fired again, hitting a Panther square in its sloped front plate. The round didn't penetrate, but it cracked the armor and disabled the gun mantlet. "Next shot," Hutchins barked. "Lower the aim, go for the hull." The Americans fired again. This time the Panther died. German forces had 2 options. Charge through the kill zone, retreat into the forest. Charging meant suicide. Retreating meant abandoning the counterattack and admitting American firepower superiority. Kruger chose survival. "All panzers, reverse, back into the forest. Infantry withdraw." The German tanks began to pull back, but the forest slowed them. Mud bogged them. Fallen trees boxed them in. Hutchins' gunner smiled grimly. "They're stuck." "Then keep shooting," Hutchins replied. One more Tiger took a hit in the engine deck, burst into flame, and died like a wounded animal. Another Panther lost a track and lay helpless until its crew bailed out and fled, slipping and scrambling through mud. The final tally: 5 Panthers destroyed, 3 Panthers disabled and abandoned. 2. Tiger is destroyed. 1 Tiger. I damaged and escaped. German infantry losses were heavy. Morale was shattered. This was supposed to be a counterattack. Instead, it became a rout. Hours later, as dusk fell, the battlefield was silent, except for the crackle of burning fuel and the groaning of cooling steel. American infantry finally crossed the clearing and inspected the wrecks. One young private stood beside the smoking hull of a Tiger and whispered, "So, this is what everyone was scared of." Hutchins, standing nearby, replied quietly, "It's still dangerous, but now we've got something that bites back." He tapped the barrel of the 90mm gun. This is the equalizer. When word reached Field Marshal Model that Tigers had turned back, not by artillery, not by mines, but by American tank destroyers, he went pale. He read the battlefield report twice, then a third time. Finally he said, "The Americans have achieved long-range dominance. The Tiger is no longer supreme." He ordered a change in doctrine. Tigers to avoid open ground, Panthers to never crest without smoke. New ambush tactics focused on shorter ranges, greater reliance on infantry and Panzerfaust teams. No more frontal thrusts without reconnaissance. For the first time in 4 years of war, Germany was adapting not to the Soviet threat, but to the Americans. And the weapon forcing that adaptation was the 90mm gun. The engagement in the Hürtgen clearing was small, a skirmish by strategic standards, but it changed everything. It proved 3 facts beyond doubt. The Americans could kill heavy German armor at long range. The Germans no longer controlled the engagement distance. The psychological dominance of the Tiger was broken. From that day forward, German tank commanders approached American lines with caution, with fear, with the knowledge that somewhere out there, unseen, silent, patient, an American 90mm gun might be waiting. And it would strike first. 2 weeks later, Hutchins wrote a letter to his wife. He didn't describe the horror, the noise, the burning metal. Just this: "We faced Tigers today," and for the first time they turned around and went home. He paused before adding the last line, "It's not over, but I think we finally have a chance." Long after the campaign ended, after the war was lost, after the uniforms were buried in trunks or burned in final acts of shame, the surviving German tankers who fought in the Hürtgen clearing would remember one emotion above all: helplessness. For years, German armor crews had held an unspoken confidence, almost arrogance, in their machines. The Tiger, the Panther, even the Panzer IV late models, all were weapons they believed could dominate any battlefield if used correctly. They had the range, they had the accuracy, they dictated the terms of engagement. But on that cold October morning, everything shifted. Obergefreiter Alois Hartmann, who escaped his immobilized Panther that day, later recalled, "We could not see where they were. We did not understand what was killing us. It felt like being hunted by an invisible beast." He described the sound of the 90mm rounds: a crack, then a ripping noise, as something tore through the forest air like a bolt of hard wind. Several shells missed his tank by meters, each one snapping branches and showering the Panther's hull with fragments of shattered wood. Hartmann swore the rounds landed before he heard the American guns fire. That wasn't true, of course, but physics didn't allow it. But it told the story well enough. To the German crews, the Americans had turned into long-range predators, and German armor was no longer the apex. Back on the ridge, the mood among the M36 crews was far more complex than the victory reports later implied. There was pride. Yes, the kind that came from performing well under fire, from seeing the weapon they'd trained with do what it was meant to do. But there was something else too: the smell of burning gasoline, the sight of men abandoning flaming vehicles, the distant cries for medics echoing across the clearing. Corporal Klein, the gunner, sat on the edge of the turret after the fighting ended, legs dangling loosely over the side, helmet off, hair soaked with sweat and rain. Hutchins approached, handing him a canteen. "You did good today." Klein nodded silently. After a moment he said, "I know they're the enemy, but I kept thinking, that could have been us." Hutchins didn't answer right away. He looked across the clearing at the carcasses of the Tigers and Panthers, smoke rising lazily from the shattered hulls. Even from a distance, the destruction was intimate. Too close. Too personal. Finally he said, "That's why you fire first. You fire fast and you fire straight." He said it as a reminder, a mantra, a truth carved from experience. Klein didn't argue. He just nodded again. As night fell, a fog descended over the clearing, smoothing the jagged shapes of the destroyed tanks into dark silhouettes. The forest was silent again, eerily so, as if the trees themselves were trying to erase the violence that had just unfolded. American engineers moved cautiously among the wrecks, retrieving intelligence, checking for booby traps, marking safe paths through the shell-torn terrain. Somewhere in the distance, a lone German machine gun cheered sporadically, not in combat, but in frustration, or fear, or habit. It echoed across the valley like a reminder that the war was far from finished. Hutchins climbed back into the Bluebird, closed the hatch, and let the darkness swallow the world. Tomorrow they would move again. Tomorrow there would be another ridge, another forest, another fight. But tonight, the M36 crews knew one thing. The Tigers had turned back, and that changed everything. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.